Go. Wait. Here we go.
No. Oh, dear.
Come on.
Bitch, nigga, stop fucking playing with us. Nigga. Read my fucking chest, nigga. Read my fucking chest. They want to teach you in the fucking city, bitch. Stop playing with us while I pull up and let off three into your motherfucking top cap. Damn, bro. Hide them fireworks, my nigga.
What the fuck was that, Joe?
I just lit off a fucking firework.
No, you didn't. What'd you shoot?
A firework, my nigga.
Umbrella. She's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. Now, what I don't understand is, after all of this time, why do we still fight to be a part of their system? We could easily use that same energy to build our own. And some people try to say, if you want to see a difference, go out there and vote for change. And then people try to blame Donald Trump getting elected on black people, especially black men. And now they're trying to scare us into voting because Donald Trump might get elected again. But to be honest, it's better that Trump did get elected over Hillary Clinton. All the things Trump said he's going to do, she did 20 years ago. At least with Trump, he don't hide it. But this system was never designed for us. And people say our ancestors died for the right to vote. No, they were murdered because they tried to vote. And if they died for anything, it was for representation. Not vote whether you prefer overt racism or covert racism. Now, a lot of people know about the Rosewood massacre in Florida. But a couple of years before that, in 1920, the Ocoee massacre happened on Election Day. Now, the 1920 election was the first election that women could vote, and that was supposed to include black women. And all across America, there were campaigns to get black people to register to vote. So in O.C., Florida, two prosperous black landowners, July Perry and Moses Norman, led a registration campaign. Now, in 1920, they had the poll taxes, but poor white people didn't have to pay it because they had grandfather clauses. So these two brothers were volunteering to pay anybody's poll tax that couldn't afford it. Now, at nights, the KKK would march down the street in the black neighborhood, warning people not to vote. And on the night before the election, they rolled through the black neighborhood with a megaphone and said, any nigga who tries to vote, you're going to face dire consequences. Now, on the day of the election, most of the black residents ignored the KKK and went to go vote. And of course, the KKK was there and they tried to scare people from voting, threatening them with violence. And when the black residents ignored them, the poll workers claimed their names were missing from the voter registration rolls. And the only person who could verify they were registered to vote was sent out of town. Now, most of the black residents gave up and just went home. But the brother Moses Norman didn't give up so easily, and they had to physically make him leave. So then the brother Moses Norman contacted another judge in another district, and he talked about filing a lawsuit for infringing on his right to vote. So the judge told him to get the name of any black person who wasn't allowed to vote, and the names of all the white poll workers that turned him away. So then the brother Moses Norman went back to the polls with other black citizens trying to vote again. But this time when they were physically turned away, he demanded their names. Now, of course, they didn't give up their name. But this brother Moses Norman said, we will vote by God. So then a white mob started forming, and it was led by a former police chief in Orlando. So this mob set out to find and kill Moses Norman and punish him by any means. So then the mob got word that he was at the home of the brother July Perry. And a mob of about 1,000 went to his house and demanded they surrender. Now, this brother July Perry was well respected in the black community, and he helped black people in the area get work and find jobs. Now, the brother July Perry casted his vote early to avoid all the trouble, but the mob saw both of these brothers as a threat, so they wanted to make an example out of them. So the former police chief leading the mob tried to kick in his brother July Perry's door, and when July Perry came to the door, he tried to grab his arm and pull him out. So then his daughter, Corthea Perry, put a gun to his chest to stop him. When the white boy tried to push the gun away, it went off, and this ex-cop was shot in the arm. So then a gun battle broke out, but two of the white people ended up getting killed. They forced the mob to retreat, and the family defended their home so well, they said it was about 37 people in the house. But it was only really July Perry, his wife, and their children, and two other people who were armed. Now, July Perry and his daughter ended up getting shot in the gun battle, and his brother July Perry went into a sugar patch to tend to his wounds. So then not too long after that, about 50 cars of white KKK reinforcement pulled up. But his brother July Perry was already arrested before the mob got to him. He ended up going to the hospital and then they took him to jail. So then about 3 o'clock in the morning, the mob went to Orlando to the jail and demanded they give them July Perry. And the sheriff didn't even try to stop him. He just gave him the keys. So they took this brother July Perry from the jail, started beating him up, and then they tied him to the back of a car and just dragged him through the streets. They drug him all the way to the neighborhood of the judge that told him to go get their names. And then they hung this brother from a lamppost so the judge could see. And then the mob riddled his body with bullets. And when they were done, they left a note around his neck saying, "This is what we do to niggas who try to vote." Now the mob thirst for blood still wasn't satisfied. They started attacking the black community, burning rows of houses on fire. Some of the black residents tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and outgunned and they couldn't really do anything. It was reported one black man, James Langmead, refused to leave, so they beat this brother up and then they castrated him. The mob was going around setting people's houses on fire and waiting for them to run out so they can shoot them. Families, pregnant women, children had to decide if they were going to burn in the fire or run out and get shot. One pregnant woman decided to stay in her house because she didn't think she could run fast enough, but she sent the rest of her family away. But her mom stayed with her and they both died in the fire. Their bodies were found burnt. Another black woman, Hattie Smith, was visiting her pregnant sister-in-law. Now the sister Hattie Smith was able to get away, but her sister-in-law and her whole family was killed. One KKK member said he saw a house they firebombed, and when the family tried to run out, 8 people got snagged in the chicken wire and then burnt alive. The mob burned down every black church, school, business, lodges. They tried to say just 2 people were killed, but anywhere from 50 to 60 people were killed. And that number may be higher. A lot of people survived by hiding in the swamps, and a lot of people left and never came back. Now, some of the black residents say the attack was planned so the white people that could steal their property that was prosperous for nothing. Then after the massacre, for about a week, the KKK put embargoes on the town, and no black person could come in or out. They threatened the residents to give up their property or they were going to kill them and destroy their property. Only a few black families got compensated for their property and they were cheated. Like they would only get $10 for 37 acres of land. By 1930, there was no black people in Ocoee and it became a sundown town. And of course, nobody was ever punished for any of it. And by the end, not one black vote was casted. But this is deeper than voting. They just use voting as an excuse. The whole purpose is to keep us in our place. In Indiana, the Gary police shot a 25-year-old brother, Rashad Cunningham, in front of his own home. So let's see how this brother ended up getting killed by the police.
Angry and heartbreaking and demanding answers. 1 week ago today, a man was shot and killed by a Gary police officer. As investigators look into the shooting, that man's friends and loved ones describe their frustration. CBS 2's Jeremy Ross is live outside the Gary Police Department with their appeal and the details of the investigation. Jeremy?
Good evening, Jim. When we first heard about this incident, the Gary Police Department telling us Lake County would handle this ongoing investigation. Tonight, one family telling us they've heard little from either agency and they've had enough.
Justice for Rashad!
They protest outside Gary's police department.
No justice, no peace!
Many raising their voices 7 days after one officer raised a gun and killed a father of 5, 25-year-old Rashad Cunningham.
We're not getting nothing from the Gary Police Department. We're not getting nothing, no answers from Lake County. If Shot, I need audio. We want the recordings. They had his whole life ahead of him. He just was getting started. No one showed me any compassion. I want my son to get justice.
You were very emotional during the news conference, yelling and shouting. Is there anger? Is there grief?
It's so much anger.
How has your family coped with this?
We are broken. We are torn apart.
In a one-on-one interview, Tonya Simmons disputes what little information her family has received about her son's death August 17th. At 23rd Avenue in Kentucky, you'll find candles at a memorial where the shooting took place. It was here around 3 a.m. that police approached a parked car with a 25-year-old and 2 others inside. Police say Cunningham was holding a gun when the shooting happened, his family providing this picture of his Indiana gun license Gary police said the Lake County Sheriff's Department will be conducting the ongoing investigation, but the family wants more law enforcement eyes watching over it.
The FBI was called. We want as much help as we can get.
We're going to show up at this city. We're going to show up at the city council. We're going to show up everywhere there is a politician, and we're going to demand that everyone be held accountable.
Gary police say all of this started as a traffic stop early Saturday morning and ended up with an officer-involved shooting death of a 25-year-old local man, Rashad Cunningham. Today, family and friends of Rashad Cunningham protesting here in Gary over what they say is a total lack of information, a narrative coming from police.
I want answers.
Heather Fox is Rashad's girlfriend. They share a 1-year-old child together. He was shot dead by a Gary police officer last Saturday morning at 3 a.m. in front of his home after what Gary police say was a traffic stop. His family and friends tell us he was with 2 friends at the time. Per protocol, the Lake County Sheriff's Department is investigating, but both departments are not commenting on what happened or the status of the investigation.
I want to know what their protocol is to approaching a car parked in front of their home. I want to know why it wasn't any put your hands up before I shoot or anything like that, before you just loaded that gun into that car and shot him in front of 2 of his best friends. Like, I just don't understand. It's been more than 72 hours. It's been like 4 days now. We have no answers. They haven't contacted us. They haven't said anything to us besides that there's no body cam video.
Rashad, a father of 5, lived here in Gary, but was planning on joining his dad in business in Wisconsin soon.
My son is amazing. Outgoing, well-spoken, graduated.
What did he want to do?
He wanted, to be honest, he wanted to help me with my business. I'm a landscaper, and he wanted to help his dad grow.
Jesse Cunningham lives in Kenosha, but says he will continue protesting until, at the very least, there is a full accounting of what happened. He says his son had a conceal and carry license and did have his gun with him at the time. He believes if his son were someone with money or prestige, things would be different.
They would have ran out here. But since it's just a lower class, it seems like, well, since it's lower class, there's no reason we got to explain to y'all. We don't have to explain nothing to y'all. So all I'm saying is I just want answers from my son.
A friend who was with Rashad Cunningham at the time says he did have that gun in his lap, but he did not make any provoking actions. The officer just opened fire 5 or 6 times. As for the officer in question, we inquired, is he on desk duty? Is he still on patrol? Or what the case may be exactly. No comment coming from Gary police.
Now, this brother Rashad Cunningham was just getting dropped off by his friends after they went out that night, and they were parked in front of his house just having a conversation. Now, at first the police said they pulled him over and it was a traffic stop. But then when it came out they were parked in front of his house, the police changed their story and said they were responding to a shots fired call. So for no apparent reason, these cops, who they haven't identified, randomly approached these brothers. So one of the cops saw this brother Rashad Cunningham had a gun, and without any warning, he immediately opened fire 5 or 6 times. And now the police won't say anything. The only thing they said is there's no body camera. And now they've turned the investigation over to their neighbor police department.
A family questioning Gary police after a man is shot and killed, the man holding a weapon in his lap. But he's also a licensed conceal and carry gun owner.
Our Eric Hawks joins us from Gary, where the family confronted the city council tonight. Eric, that meeting just ended and still no answers.
That's right, Erica and Brad. Yeah, the family of Rashad Cunningham waited hours to speak at tonight's Gary City Council meeting. They came looking for answers, only to leave in anger. 4 rows of loved ones sitting together at Tuesday's Gary City Council meeting, seeking answers surrounding their loved one's death at the hands of police. After 2.5 hours of waiting, one of them finally got to touch the podium.
My family has felt a bit disrespected. We've been here for quite some time, waiting to be heard.
Ivan Simmons is Rashad Cunningham's uncle. Gary police say Cunningham was shot and killed while police were performing a traffic stop near East 23rd Avenue and Kentucky Street close to 3 a.m. Saturday. As they approached a parked car with a 25-year-old and 2 others inside, an officer's weapon went off, ending this father of 5's life. Gary PD declining to provide any more information, including the officer who fired the shot or if anyone's been placed on administrative leave.
A wall of silence has covered this situation with Rashad. We haven't heard from anyone.
Police say Cunningham was holding a gun when the shooting happened. His family tells CBS 2 he has a concealed carry permit. Simmons getting a standing ovation during an emotional speech.
He had a Second Amendment right to carry a weapon. His pursuit of happiness is gone. He was trying to provide for his children, whom he loved. They would never see their father again.
After more waiting, Cunningham's girlfriend and the mother of his youngest son, Heather Fox, spoke. Plenty of anger pouring out after another night without answers.
But y'all will see me again, and it's not over. No justice, no peace, period.
Gary Police and the Lake County Sheriff's Department are working in tandem to conduct this death investigation. Meanwhile, Mayor Freeman Wilson telling tonight's crowd that she will push for an independent investigation when, quote, the time is right.
Now, even though this brother Rashad Cunningham did have a gun, it turns out he was licensed to carry, and he had a concealed permit. The gun he had was completely legal, and he had every right to have it. Now, even though we won't hear anything from the NRA in this case, we can't be afraid to exercise the Second Amendment, and we have to be prepared to stand our ground. And now all the police can say is this is a tragedy, but they won't name any of the cops involved, let alone which cops shot him, or if they got their paid vacation.
Rashad Cunningham's loved ones say they are outraged that weeks later they still have no answers.
It hurts. It really does hurt to know that these people that are supposed to protect and serve us, we're calling to get answers and they're hanging up, they're laughing. It don't make sense. I just want justice. I want clarification on why he would do that.
Rashad Cunningham's relatives and friends have held protests and vigils.
No justice, no peace.
They've shown up at Gary City Council meetings, but authorities have given very little information about the police shooting that killed the 25-year-old father on August 17th while he was in a parked car outside of his home. His friend was dropping him off, and witnesses say Cunningham had a gun on his lap, but they say he did not reach for it before he was shot.
He was wrongfully killed. He was permitted to carry. He was allowed to carry. What is the protocol? Is there no hands up, don't move, and you take the gun? Put your hands on the steering wheel? I thought they were trained.
Police have not released the name of the officer who opened fire, but Cunningham's relatives say they've identified him, and his personnel record reveals previous disciplinary problems, including a 30-day suspension for punching a cooperative juvenile in the stomach without provocation in 2013. The officer later admitted he lied about that incident. Cunningham's girlfriend says his loved ones will continue to push for answers.
He knew his rights. He wasn't a criminal at all. He don't have a background. He wasn't that type of person. The officer that shot him has a worse background than he ever had.
Still no comment tonight from Gary Police or the Lake County Sheriff's Department, who is handling this investigation.
Now, this brother Rashad Cunningham's family say they think they know which cop shot him, but the media still wouldn't put it out there. But it turns out this cop is the one with the record. This brother Rashad Cunningham wasn't a criminal. He didn't have a record. He had a license for the gun, and he had every right to have it, and he never even reached for it. The cop said he just saw a gun and he shot him, and they still aren't clear why they approached him in the first place. But at the end of the day, if we want these kind of situations to stop, we know what we have to do. And we don't have a choice but to get on code and do what we have to do. Because at the end of the day, we are all we got. If we don't change our situation, then nobody will.
Sam said he knocked on the door, and July said, who's there? And he said, it's me, July. Says, yes, sir, boss. Come out here, July, I want to talk to you. And he said, well, just a minute, boss, let me get my hat.
Her father had one rifle, if you would, shotgun, and he gave her one and said that, Caritha, we're going to have some problems tonight.
So July came out of the house, and Grandpa and Boyd Wilson were on the front porch. with July. And he explained to July that he was going to have to arrest him for what happened at the O's earlier that day. And July said to my grandfather, "It's cold, I want to get my coat." My grandfather didn't feel that if he got back in the house, he'd ever get him out again. So he grabbed him around the neck, and that's when Terry's daughter, 19-year-old daughter, Corita, took the rifle on my grandfather's stomach, and my grandfather reached down and got knocked out of the way, and it went off. Now, I don't know whether it went off from her pulling the trigger or from him knocking it or what, but it went in his hand and it came out of his elbow.
She wasn't in a position to do any shooting herself at that point in time because he was really more so concerned about her mother and the other children.
When Grandpa got shot, then everybody started shooting.
Bullets were flying through the house, and she said so many of you see the tracers of each bullet passing through. He was inside of his home shooting out of one, I suppose, a window back at these men that were shooting at him.
The shooting took off for about 10 minutes, and then it quit. And when it got through, 6 white guys were injured, 2 white guys were killed. Mr. Perry was seriously wounded. Corita was wounded.
After her father was wounded, he told her that she needed to take her mother and the other children and get them out of the house to safety, and that he would not be coming with them. And she said she recalled asking Papa, "We don't want to leave you," and he said, "You have to."
They all took off out a trap door out the back where the two dead white guys were and headed for the cane fields.
And she said she recalls praying and said, "Lord, you got to help us get out of here." And she said she looked at the back door, and there was a cat hole there where the cat could come in and out of the house. And she said upon looking through the cat hole, she looked through a cornfield and saw a path of light beaming from the moon, but it shined a path of light that gave them a route to take.
I ain't got no time. I ain't got no time for talk too much. That's what I'm talking about. Go in there with him. Come on, go in there with him. Go in there with him. Go in there with him. Go in there with him.
Step away from the window.
Y'all can step away from the window. Y'all can come up down there. So y'all, I'm getting a little more.
Step away from the window.
Let y'all know this is the second time I've been here with this shot disrespecting black women. This is over with. Last time, it's gonna happen. Y'all step away from this window, or y'all stay here, continue to support these people that continue to disrespect y'all. And when black men stand up for y'all by these clowns disrespecting us, we don't get the support we need from y'all. Y'all get away from that. Y'all come on out.
Come on out. Y'all need to come on out. You've been warned. We're gonna shut it down.
Thank you.
All right. No problem. Move.
All right. See that?
Move. I told you to move.
That's not right. Somebody should call the police on that.
You get 911.
I told her, come out. Come out. Come out.
Back it up.
Come out.
The brother said he wasn't playing. He's not playing. He said he wasn't playing. He is not playing. That's okay. He knows. He knows. You got another one.
Yeah.
Take it in.
I got mine. Stop playing. Y'all play too much. We talk too much. That's it. Quit playing. Stop disrespecting black women. I ain't saying that.
Don't move. Don't move. Just put it in your pocket.
I'm not hiding. I'm not going to keep doing it. Yep. Come on up out of there.
Back it up, sister.
Ain't no question. Welcome there.
So this is what happens when somebody stands up. He stood up. He stood up. He told you what it's going to be. He stood up.
And he came out and he did what he needed to do.
He did what was in his heart to do. He's out. He's done it.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Tyrone.
Sir, really?
No, it's not, man. I'm a bit upset.
Really? This is not
It's not.
Doesn't matter. They're playing a fool. I'm legitimately outraged.
Well, you can be that way, but you don't.
I don't care.
Clearly, dude.
I don't care. Shut it.
Wow.
Give me the form, you fool. Give me the form, you asshole. You fucking jigaboo. Give me the fucking form.
Oh.
Can you send it police right?
Yeah, right now.
Give me the form, you fucking nigger.
Oh, no, that's a
Guys, give me the plate, nigger.
What?
Get that shit on video. Legal firearm on me, so you niggers gonna follow me. Just so you know. 3.
Damn, that's how you feeling?
You got what? What'd you say?
That's fall.
What'd you say, nigger?
Damn. See, look, you can see. He said he got fire on him. He said, you know, he calling his niggas. Damn.
Put that shit over you.
What do you think, Dylan?
What
do you think? Nigga, calm, coonery.
Yeah, you won't because your communities are destroyed. Africa, no one wants to be there. That's why you're here.
You threatened to shoot me, sir.
I did not.
You threatened to shoot me.
First of all, we don't do gay weddings or mixed race.
Okay, so why not?
Because of our Christian race. I mean, our Christian belief.
Okay, we're Christians as well. So, what in the Bible tells you that?
Well, I don't want to argue my faith.
No, that's
But
fine.
we just don't participate.
Okay.
We just choose not to.
Okay, so that's your Christian belief, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Attorney of a Boonville business speaks out after a video went viral of the business owner refusing services to an interracial couple.
WTVA's Amanda Haley has the surprising reaction from the bride-to-be.
Donna Russell told Kaylee Jones and Ladarius Andrews that they could not have their wedding here at Boone's Camp event venue. A family member went there to find out why.
First of all, we don't do gay weddings or mixed race.
Okay, so why not?
Because of our Christian race. I mean, our Christian belief.
Okay, we're Christians as well. So,
Yes,
what in the Bible tells you that?
Well, I don't want to argue my faith.
No, that's
But
fine.
we just don't participate.
That's Donna Russell in the video. She is one of the owners of Boone's Camp Event Hall in Booneville. Russell refused to host a wedding. She said it was because of her Christian beliefs and the fact that the couple is interracial. On Saturday was when the bride-to-be found out she and her husband weren't welcome at the venue. The video went viral and got lots of local reaction. The city of Booneville responded by saying that the city does not condone discrimination of any sort. Jones says she wants to focus on her engagement, and the Christian thing to do is to forgive Russell and move on. She says Russell reached out to apologize to her and her fiancé. I spoke to the owner, Donna Russell, several times today, and she wasn't able to go on camera, but she tells me that she knows she made a big mistake, and the only thing left to do is make it right. And the venue's attorney just released a statement echoing what she said, adding the venue's owners are grateful the bride forgave them. Also, the couple's been invited to use the facility. And the owner just told me that the couple has booked another facility, but she repeated that she forgave them and that this is something they can look past.
A federal lawsuit claims the Baltimore County Police Department unintentionally discriminated against African Americans who applied for entry-level positions. The allegations stem from test results. WJC is live in Towson. Ava Burnett tells us the county executive says he's already taking steps to make changes. Ava Joy.
Well, Vic, this right here is a lawsuit from the Department of Justice, not only against the county, but it also names Baltimore County Police. John Yashevsky, the county executive, says he is committed to diversifying that police department and that he's already taken some steps to ensure that more African Americans get hired. In a 6-page civil complaint, the Justice Department said Baltimore County and its police department unintentionally discriminated against African Americans who applied for entry-level police officer and cadet positions. The DOJ said Baltimore County's Human Resources Department developed a test which African American candidates failed at a higher rate. DOJ said the exams have caused a disparate impact on African American applicants on the basis of race, and they have a problem with the exams which are not related to the job. The test focused on reading comprehension, vocabulary, spelling, and grammar, along with logical ordering and observation skills. DOJ wants a court to order Baltimore County to refrain from using written examinations to screen and select applicants. You said this was a surprise to you.
Oh, I was. It was a surprise.
Baltimore County Councilmember Julian Jones says he's confident the county will make changes, but he's also concerned.
Well, it's important that the police department reflect the communities that we serve. That's important in terms of community relations as well as relating to the people that we serve.
County Executive John Yoshevsky said he's committed to diversity and in a statement said, in the interest of moving forward and while denying any liability for actions by prior administrations, we have stopped using the test that the Justice Department believes has an adverse impact on African American applicants. Oshevsky says he's already working with the new police chief, the first woman to lead the department, Melissa Hyatt, about how to increase diversity.
I'm confident that we will fix it.
His job to investigate police shootings, and tonight he's out of a job, accused of not being fair. CBS 2's Dorothy Tucker talked to him so you can be the judge.
When a Chicago police officer shoots a civilian, the Independent Police Review Authority investigates to determine if the shooting was justified. Since 2007, there have been 400 officer-involved shootings. Only one was ruled unjustifiable. This one from 2013, when an officer fired into this car.
One unjustified shooting. What does that say to the public?
That they are not being investigated fairly.
Lorenzo Davis is a former supervising investigator for the board. He says he was fired 11 days ago for refusing to change his findings on 6 shootings.
I have done interviews or canvasses. I've looked for witnesses.
And concluded all 6 officers were unjustified in pulling their triggers.
You cannot shoot someone because they did not obey your order.
Davis, a former Chicago police commander, says he had received good reviews until last year when bosses concluded he had a clear bias against the police.
Morally, I cannot change it. I have integrity. I just can't do it.
Ironically, when the Independent Review Board was created in 2007, it was in response to accusations that the old board, which was controlled by the police, was unfair to citizens. Davis says this board is no better.
To me, they have a hidden agenda, one that I don't know about, to decide that virtually all police shootings are justified. That logically cannot be.
As for those 6 cases that Davis ruled unjustified, they're all in limbo right now, and any or all could be changed to justifiable. We reached out to the city of Chicago and the police authority and have not heard back from them.
I'm sure people are wondering, the Independent Police Review Authority, how independent is it?
Supposedly it is independent. However, according to Davis, all of the top administrators are former law enforcement officers with the DEA, the FBI, Chicago Police. So there is a connection.
A celebration of freedom decades in the making.
We've just been praying and just trusting God that this day will come, and it's here, and we're so grateful to God.
In 1983, Alvin Kennard was charged with taking $50 during a Bessemer robbery. Thanks to prior burglary and larceny convictions, he was sentenced to life without parole under Alabama's old 3 strikes rule. Then today, Judge David Carpenter gave Kennard credit for time served. His niece, Patricia Jones, elated the life sentence was satisfied.
He had to be sentenced, but with it being so severe, we was just hoping that one day God would free him, and he did.
Judge Carpenter said that if Kennard had been given life in prison under the state's current sentencing guidelines, he would have been eligible for parole back in 1999. Instead, he had to wait 20 extra years to receive his freedom. During today's resentencing, Kennard apologized and took responsibility for his crime. He told the judge he wants to become a carpenter.
He said he want to get him a job. He want to support himself, and we're going to support him. And in every way we can.
Jones and the judge were not sure exactly when her uncle will be released from Bessemer's Donaldson prison.
I need somebody to get Debra Messing on the phone right now and tell her to call me. Matter of fact, send this video to her. Listen here, Debra. Listen to me when I'm talking to you. And I normally don't talk to women like that, but you have no respect and no class. Okay? Now, I'm about to go off on you for 2 reasons. The first reason is because you promoted a message saying that Black Trump supporters have a mental illness. I am not mentally ill, okay? Just because I can think for myself, that does not make me mentally ill, I have the right to vote for who I want to vote for. I have the right to think for myself. You do not own me. The Democrat Party does not own me. Okay? So get that straight. Don't get it twisted. I'm not dumb and I'm not mentally ill. Okay? I am just fine. Very stable. And I voted for President Donald J. Trump, and I'm doing it again in 2020.
All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, I don't know what it's going to take for us to start standing up for ourselves. And I don't get it because a lot of people are willing to die and kill for a society that has never wanted them and that has had no problem shedding our blood. But we're scared to do it for ourselves. One person from the dominant society can come into our neighborhood and terrorize everybody. And far too often, we let them get away with it. But you can't ask or beg for justice. You have to take it. And if people know there's no consequences when they harm you, they're going to keep on doing it. But if they know if I go into this community and hurt somebody, then there's going to be consequences, they're going to think twice about it. There's nothing wrong with protecting yourself and protecting your loved ones. And don't let nobody shame you for it. Because believe me, they will protect theirs. 100 years ago, back in 1919, in Jenkins County, Georgia, during the Red Summer, a brother named Joe Ruffin, who was a very prosperous farmer and one of the wealthiest black people in the area, was on his way to church when he saw his friend Edmond Scott in handcuffs in a police car. Now, the two white cops, W. Clifford Brown and Thomas Stevens, arrested him because he had a gun. But of course, everybody had a gun in 1919. So when the brother Joe Ruffin saw his friend in a police car, he stopped and offered to pay his bail right then and there. He wrote a check for $400, which would be equivalent to about $6,000 today, I think. But the cop said, I don't take checks, I only accept cash. But it was a Sunday, so he couldn't go to the bank and get any cash. So then the brother Joe Ruffin just said, forget this, and started opening the police car door and just taking his friend Edmond Scott out the car. So then the white cop, W. Clifford Brown, pulled out his gun and hit Joe Ruffin in the face with it, and then knocked him unconscious. But when he hit him with the gun, it went off. And Joe Ruffin's son that just got out of the army thought the cop had shot and killed his father. So then Joe Ruffin's son, Louis Ruffin, pulled out his gun and shot the cop W. Clifford Brown. But before Louis Ruffin shot him, he ended up killing the brother Edmond Scott. So then when the other cop, Thomas Stevens, tried to pull out his gun, Louis Ruffin ended up shooting and killing him. Now when the word got out, white mobs got together and started rampaging on the black neighborhood, and they burnt down the church. Then the mob went to the brother Joe Ruffin's house and burnt down his car, and then lynched two of his sons, including a 13-year-old. And then they threw their bodies into a fire. Now the mob ended up burning down a church, 3 Masonic lodges, but the brother Joe Ruffin ended up surviving. So then they ended up charging his brother Joe Ruffin with murder, even though he never killed anybody. But of course they were threatening to lynch him. And when he went to trial, he was convicted and they sentenced him to be hung. But he filed a motion for a new trial and he ended up getting acquitted. Then they tried to charge him with the murder of the other cop, but he beat that too. Eventually, they charged his brother Joe Ruffin with the murder of his friend Edmond Scott, who he was trying to help in the first place, and they sentenced him to 15 years. He did get a retrial, but he broke out of jail, and he spent the rest of his life free anyway. Now, by the time the white mob finished attacking the black community, 4 black people were killed, and another black man was taken out of jail and lynched for no reason. And you already know that nobody was ever charged or punished, because if we don't punish them, nobody will. In America, white supremacy is legal, and they don't care if it's a man or a woman or an elderly or a child. In Illinois, a young 12-year-old brother, Amir Worship, was shot in his own bed by the SWAT team. So let's see how a young 12-year-old brother could get shot by the police while he's in his room sleeping.
A police raid gone horribly wrong in the south suburbs. 12-year-old boy shot in the knee. Now his mother is talking only to CBS 2. Our Jim Williams is taking a close look at what happened inside their home.
5 in the morning in late May, here at this home in Markham.
We home in bed. The kids were sleeping.
Sleeping, Crystal Worship says, until nearly 24 officers from Country Club Hills and Richmond Park shattered the morning quiet.
These were SWAT officers. They were dressed in military fatigues. Their faces were covered. They had helmets on. All of them had automatic or assault rifles.
And they had a search warrant to arrest Worship's boyfriend, wanted for drug possession and possession of weapons with an expired FOID card.
And then next thing you know, we hear police, police. Then we hear the flashbangs.
The flash grenades left burn marks on the floor, but what happened next was far worse.
We hear a shot, and I goes to go to where the shot was at.
It was her son, 12-year-old Amir, shot by an officer.
When he goes to put his flashlight back in his vest and then returns his arm and his hand to the handle and the trigger of the gun discharges,
striking the boy in the knee, shattering his kneecap.
But as soon as it was clear that this 12-year-old boy didn't pose any threat, and there was no one else in the room who posed any threat, he should have moved his gun down, put it on the safety position so it could never be discharged.
Worship says she tried to run to her son but was restrained by police.
The police had grabbed the back of my neck.
She says she was taken to the police station instead of being allowed to go with her son to the hospital. She was not even the target of the warrant.
Following a nearly year-long CBS 2 investigation of
CBS 2 investigators have uncovered several bad Chicago police raids that have traumatized children, and now Worship is describing how her family was hurt.
I have nightmares, and I stay up all night because I think they're going to come back.
12-year-old Amir Worship had surgery and faces a long rehabilitation. His mom told us Amir is now terrified of police. She moved him to Texas. Country Club Hills police say they're awaiting an investigation by state police and have no comment. The Richmond Park police chief has not returned our calls. As for the charges against Crystal Worship's boyfriend, they were dropped.
So the police say they had a search warrant. They were looking for Amir's mom's boyfriend. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, they broke their door down, and they used anywhere from 2 to 5 flashbangs and ran into the house with full military gear and assault rifles. And then when they broke into this 12-year-old brother Amir Worship's bedroom, the police came in pointing their assault rifles at him. Now this young 12-year-old brother just waking up out of his sleep with no shirt on, and they forced him to get up with his hands up and sit on the bed, and he did with his hands up the whole time. And the police say one of the cops was putting a flashlight back in his pocket, and when he put his hands back on the gun, it went off. When his mom ran into the room, she said the cops told her they were shooting at somebody who was walking by. And then she said the cop that shot him covered up his name badge and covered up his body camera. And this young 12-year-old brother Amir Worship was crying and screaming for his mom. And when she tried to go to him, she said the police grabbed her by her neck and pulled her back. And then when they took this young brother Amir to the hospital, they not only ended up detaining his mom, they detained his 13-year-old brother. And then after the police did all this, they ended up dropping whatever charges Amir's mom's boyfriend had, which was the reason why the SWAT went into the house in the first place. Now the family did file a lawsuit, but this 12-year-old might not be able to play sports again or even walk the same. But of course the police are silent because they protect their own, even when they hurt our children. Just like when a SWAT team killed a 7-year-old Aiyana Jones while she was sleeping in her own house. Nobody was ever punished for that either. But if a black cop did that to a white kid or anybody white, then you already know what'll happen.
Charges have now been filed against 2 former police officers involved in that deadly drug raid on Harding Street earlier this year.
Former officer Gerald Goines now charged with 2 counts of murder. Steven Bryant facing a charge of tampering with a government document in connection with the case.
Channel 2 investigates all over this story tonight. We start our team coverage with investigator Joel Eisenbaum, who lays out what all happened today. Joel?
Jonathan, there is no doubt a lot happened in the Harding Street matter today. None of it good for these 2 former HPD officers who can now officially be labeled as criminal defendants.
I've not seen a case like this in my 30-plus years of practicing law.
Noticeably upset in court Friday, retired HPD narcotics officer Gerald Goines, 54, must know he's in deep legal trouble. Officially charged twice. Murdering married couple Dennis Tuttle and Rhogena Nicholas at their home, even though Goines may have not taken the fatal shots. Tuttle had 9 bullet wounds, Nicholas had 5. Remarkably, things could get even worse for the former veteran HPD officer.
We believe that the evidence shows that during the commission of one felony, Goines committed acts clearly dangerous to human life. It makes it murder, but capital murder could be considered by a grand jury.
That would make it a death penalty eligible crime. Although there was absolutely no indication Friday DA Ogg would pursue that course. Importantly, a grand jury has not yet signed off on the 2 murder charges against Goines or an evidence tampering charge against another former HPD narcotics officer, Steven Bryant. Bryant seen in court Friday in shorts. But why not let a grand jury indict them first?
What it says is that this is a case like no other that we've seen. We handled it in a way we thought most appropriate, and we felt based on the safety of the public, the safety of the confidential informants that were used in this case, the fact that the defendants both have active passports, have access to their retirement money and their drop files, that it was important that we let the public know we had brought charges now.
The district attorney also said
Today, Ogg did not rule out the possibility there could be even more criminal charges for both Goines and Bryant. We expect a grand jury to hear this matter within the coming weeks.
Yeah, Jonathan, after that riveting announcement today by DA Ogg, you had these 2 former NYPD officers walk the hallway behind me here, go into the courtroom, and face the judge about these charges. They once swore to protect. Now former HPD narcotics officers Gerald Goines and Steven Bryant are being viewed by the Harris County District Attorney's Office as violent criminals for their actions surrounding the botched raid on Harding Street.
Today, we charged Gerald Goines with 2 counts of felony murder. We've also charged former HPD officer Steven Bryant with 1 count of second-degree tampering with a government document.
The 2 men were in court this afternoon following the bombshell charges. Goines charged in the murder of Dennis Tuttle and Rhogena Nicholas. Bryant charged with tampering of a government document. Goines was given strict bail requirements and charged $150,000 bond for each count. His attorney, Nicole DeBoard, said they were shocked at the charges.
We're a little disappointed and surprised that in a case that's as serious as this one, the district attorney's office did not bother to vet it with a grand jury. No grand jury's heard the facts and circumstances of this allegation, and I think that's a very important part of this process. So I was a little disappointed to see that there was what seems to me to be a rush to judgment in this case.
David Mitchum is the prosecutor in this case. He says this is about seeking justice.
And when a matter like this occurs, certainly public confidence can be rattled. And so we are focused on justice in this matter, and we will seek it out, and we will find it, and we will get justice in these cases.
So in Houston, 2 black cops, Officer Gerald Goines and Steven Bryant, was charged with murder after 2 white people was killed in the shootout during a drug raid. Now keep in mind, neither of these cops actually killed these 2 white people. In fact, Gerald Goines was shot in the face. But now the police are saying Gerald Goines lied to get a no-knock warrant. And they're trying to accuse him of taking drugs and money on some training day stuff. Now apparently, he knew that white boy was doing something. But of course they aren't going to talk about that. But that white boy was about that life enough to shoot it out with the cops. And he shot 4 cops. And even though this white boy was a drug dealer, selling heroin, destroying his community, they didn't show mugshot pictures of him. They showed pictures of him as a happy couple. Even though this white boy just shot it out with the police, in this case, for some reason, they're talking about the cop's background and not this white boy. But since Gerald Goines didn't actually kill them, they're saying since he lied to get warrants is a felony. And if somebody get killed while you're committing a felony, it don't matter how, they can charge you with murder. So now with this cop, they don't even have to prove he intended to kill him, even though they still may charge him with capital murder too. So somehow they found a way to charge this black cop with 2 counts of murder. And then they're charging his partner, Steven Bryant, with a felony for tampering with government records for trying to help him. Because he believed in the blue wall of silence and it applied to them. And he tried to protect his fellow officer. But in this case, he was charged with a felony. Now, even though these 2 cops weren't the only cops involved, for some reason in these cases, these 2 cops were the only ones disowned and thrown under the bus.
Shocking charges against 2 former Houston police officers for their roles in a botched drug raid in January. Those officers are now out on bond. A husband and wife were killed in the raid and 4 officers were wounded. Tonight, we're answering your questions about how we got to this point and where the case goes from here. We have team coverage beginning with Larry Siebert in downtown Houston. Larry?
Then around noon, a judge here signed arrest warrants. Then prosecutors called lawyers for both Gerald Goines and Steven Bryant to hash out their surrender. But what happened next inside this courthouse behind me opened eyes. Gerald Goines and Steven Bryant turned themselves in court with lawyers, a bondsman, and prosecutors in the dark about it until reporters called.
I've not seen a case like this in my 30-plus years of practicing law.
Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg charged Goines with 2 counts of felony murder for his role in the deaths of Rhogena Nicholas and Dennis Tuttle. In January, both died in a botched Houston police drug raid and shooting that wounded 4 officers, including the now retired Goines. Prosecutors say he lied to get a no-knock warrant for the raid he led. And after it happened, Ogg claims former officer Steven Bryant lied about a drug buy too.
We recognize that the community has been violated. And I want to assure my fellow Houstonians and other residents of Harris County that we are getting to the truth.
Calling Goines a flight risk, prosecutors asked for $250,000 bonds, a curfew, GPS monitor, and travel restrictions.
I think that it says we want to draw attention to this filing is unfortunately what I think it says. This is not a standard bond. He's been cooperative since the very first day that he learned there was an investigation. He talked with police. He's lived in the same house that he's lived in all along. There's no reason to believe that he would go anywhere.
Bryant's bond was lower but more complicated. His case was supposed to be heard in another court, but that judge was not here. So we watched the judge in Goines' case call his colleague before giving Bryant a $50,000 bond.
I think it's really important for this community to understand our charges that are a result of the Houston Police Department's investigation. So yes, we can investigate ourselves. And yes, we did pursue the good, the bad, and the ugly.
HPD Chief Art Acevedo long expected charges and predicts more will follow. Tomorrow, Gerald Goines will be at a doctor. It's a pre-op visit for surgery he needs to help him get over injuries he suffered in that shooting. He was shot in the face in that raid that caused all of his legal trouble. And Lynn, he is not allowed to leave Harris County.
Now, when their people call for justice for these innocent drug dealers that shot it out with the police, somebody gotta pay. The DA says she never seen a case like this. And the police chief, Art Acevedo, with all the bodies under his watch, said these 2 cops dishonored the badge. And the police immediately changed their policies. And even though black people been asking, marching, and begging for them to do something about the no-knock policy, as soon as these 2 white drug dealers were killed, they said they were getting rid of no-knock warrants immediately. Then they gave Gerald Goines a bail far higher than anybody else, just to send a message, not only to the dominant society, but to us. And this time, they actually did investigate themselves. Or they investigated a certain few anyway. And even though these 2 cops did nothing but cooperate with the police, and aren't actually the ones who shot these white people, they still consider them a flight risk. And now that it's white lives that have been lost, and you can blame a black person for it, somebody has to pay. And they're really going to burn Gerald Goines. But you can't change the system from within the system. Somehow when it's black and blue, blue lives don't matter quite as much. All of a sudden they can find a way to punish a cop. But if we're waiting on their justice system to give us justice, we're going to be waiting for a long time. We are the only ones that can give us justice. And they understand this. They understand we are the biggest threat. They understand we are a threat to white supremacy. That's why we're still their biggest target. Because they know once we realize we are all we got and we get on code and we do what we have to do, then there's nothing that can stop us.
We know we've had a criminal violation already, and serious criminal violation by the individual that prepared that affidavit.
You allowed cops to go in and shoot 2 innocent people.
The no-knock warrant's going to be going away as kind of like leaded gasoline in our city. And so you're going to see some changes very quickly.
Horrible. I knew it wasn't true about the drug house.
How did you know?
I just know.
It's first-degree murder. We call that felony murder. Today, we charge Gerald Goines with 2 counts of felony murder.
3 teenagers out buying potato chips end up wrongly accused of armed robbery. The person accusing them, an off-duty Chicago police officer. An officer CBS 2's Dave Savini has been following because of other complaints and incidents. Here's Dave with this original report.
I was terrified. Guns being in our face.
Police guns were pointed at these teens suspected of armed robbery at this 7-Eleven.
They put a gun right here and it was a gun to the left.
But store surveillance footage obtained by the two investigators clearly shows there was no robbery. In 2014, Austin, Christopher, and a friend, who don't want their last names used, were 16 when they were wrongly accused by this Chicago cop.
I'm Dave Savini from Channel 2.
Officer Michelle Marcy Murphy, who was parked in a disabled parking spot when we found her, was off duty the night she called 911, claiming the teens were armed and fleeing.
I see a knife.
She first told the 911 operator this guy was the robber.
A gray hoodie, a white guy.
Then she pinned it on the teens.
There's 3 male blacks.
Next, she claimed the teens robbed this gas station.
I guarantee you they robbed this gas station.
Responding officers stopped the teen's car in this Mount Greenwood neighborhood.
I had my hands in the air, gun to the back of my head, slammed on the ground on my kneecaps, and somebody put their knee on the back of my head, and I was cuffed from that point forward.
There's an allegation that you called 911 and made a bogus robbery call.
The police didn't tell you that it was an off-duty cop that did this.
Nope, not at all.
Raise your hand and say, Lord Jesus.
Reverend Catherine Brown had her own run-in with the same officer.
So all you wanted to do is get into your driveway.
That's it.
Brown calls it a case of road rage that ultimately led to Marcy Murphy ramming her squad into Brown's car, despite Brown's 2 small children being inside. Marcy Murphy used pepper spray and pointed her gun at Brown, and other officers dragged her to the ground.
Beat me down to my underwear.
Because of our investigation, IPRA is now investigating Marcy Murphy for the Brown case. In the teens case, the officer got a 30-day suspension.
Do you think a 30-day suspension was enough?
No.
She still has a gun.
She put us in a ton of danger because all of the officers had their guns out. They were ready to shoot. They were ready to get us. They were ready to, react to an armed robber.
Marcy Murphy has had 19 complaints in 10 years, including arresting a woman for felony drug possession. The so-called illegal drug was a prescription for the woman's elderly mother. A wrongful arrest lawsuit against the city by that woman was settled. Catherine Brown has an ongoing legal case over her experience with Marcy Murphy, and the teens are also planning on suing, and the city still not commenting because of the lawsuit.
Okay, has the jury reached a verdict? We have. Okay, you can go ahead and give the verdict form to the bailiff. All right, and if the defense would remain standing, and if Madam Clerk would please publish our verdict.
Yes, Your Honor. State of Florida versus Michael Draca, case number 1809851CF, as to the charge of manslaughter. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of manslaughter as charged. If and only if you find the defendant guilty of manslaughter, then please further find if the state has proven this fact beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant carried, displayed, used, threatened to use, or attempted to use a firearm during the commission of the crime. Yes.
Tonight, the family of Marquis McLaughlin say they've finally seen the day that they've been waiting for.
Absolutely, and a jury found his killer, Michael Draca, guilty of manslaughter.
Today, they're talking about the impact of that decision. ABC Action News reporter Haley Bull is in Clearwater at Mount Zion United Methodist Church, where the family spoke out today.
McLaughlin's family and the attorneys representing them say they're thankful and that this is an important verdict, but they also say this is one step and that there's still a long ways to go.
And I know Marquis is looking down, and I know he's happy that I stood up.
It's been more than a year since Marquis McLaughlin was killed, but now his family and the attorneys representing them say they saw justice. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of manslaughter as charged.
Justice did happen.
A jury found Michael Draca guilty of manslaughter Friday night.
It's not just an important verdict for African Americans. It is an important verdict for all Americans.
A verdict the jury reached after more than 6 hours of deliberation.
It's obviously very disappointing, especially after the question from the jury, because they were clearly considering reasonable doubt as to self-defense.
Draca shot and killed McLaughlin last year after a dispute over a handicapped parking spot. Video shows McLaughlin pushed Draca to the ground, and Draca responded with gunfire. It sparked rallies and outcries in the weeks that followed.
Oh, one of the messages would be that Pinellas County, we're not taking that. No, we're not taking that here.
McLaughlin's family and attorneys representing them spoke out Saturday. They thanked the community and prosecutors, and now look ahead to what comes next.
This is the day that we've all been looking for, I've been waiting for, and we still got a long ways to go.
But for this mother, this verdict is one she made sure to share with her kids.
And I said, baby, we got justice for daddy. He said, Mommy, that's good.
Drake's sentencing is scheduled for October 10th. An attorney representing him says they do not plan to seek a bond hearing before then, but they do plan to file a motion for a new trial.
A controversial new dress code at a Midtown Sacramento bar in the spotlight tonight.
The whole list bothers me. Men of color, black men in particular, wear a lot of the things on that list.
And some say the new rules are discriminatory, especially against African Americans.
CBS 13's Shot Rashad is live from Bar West on J Street with the controversy.
Yeah, this is a popular stretch of nightlife here on Sacramento and on J Street and 28th. The bar in question is Bar West. It sits right next to Red Rabbit, just down the ways from Harlow's. But some patrons tell me that they've seen, specific shoes not allowed at area bars. But they also tell me that they feel the dress code here is targeting specific groups.
People want to dress how they want to dress.
Bar West on J Street is one of the popular hotspots in Sacramento's Midtown scene, known for its burgers and wings and nightlife.
I just want to know who they're trying not to have us come to their establishment. Just say that.
Just recently, a patron dining next door says she walked out to see this dress code sign that included no grills, no chains, no baggy clothing, and no sportswear.
The whole list bothers me. Men of color, black men in particular, wear a lot of the things on that list.
Sonia Lewis with Sacramento for Black Lives says they used to hold chapter meetings in Bar West and had to have several talks with staff and management about their service to communities of color.
How could they be taking steps backwards was my first reaction. It is very much indicative of the Midtown experience.
The dress code sign is specifically for after 10 p.m. patrons, and it also included no gang colors.
What does that mean? I worked in a middle school. Yellow was for one gang, brown was for another, red and blue are taken. So what does that leave? Everybody gets to wear pink?
We did ask to speak with managers at Bar West. No one was available. But this Bar West patron enjoying his Labor Day says it's the establishment's right to refuse service to whoever they want.
If they want to keep a certain kind of vibe and energy and brand out here, I completely respect that. They have the right to do that. And if someone wants to wear sweats or joggers or any of those things on there, they could just go somewhere else.
Now, I made several attempts to reach the owner of Bar West and the general manager, but our calls were not returned. Meanwhile, the Sacramento for Black Lives group wants to reach out themselves and just simply have a conversation about this issue.
All right, well, appreciate you meeting with us today.
Oh, I'm glad you came in.
Yeah.
Glad you came in. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, because I wanted to talk to you about something.
Yeah.
From, the first meeting that we had, remember that? When you had first got this job?
Yeah.
And when you came here, you had talked about my hair like you're not liking it and you not want to recruit nobody with locks like mine.
It's not that we don't recruit them, but we make it very clear that once they get in here, they're not going to have their hair that way. I told you, though, because you were here before me, and I didn't think it was fair for me to tell you that you needed to cut your hair, and that I was going to let you have it.
Yeah, but that's kind of basically saying you're not going to bring nobody in with hair like mine.
Probably not.
That's kind of to me, that's a racist comment.
Well,
because I'm just supporting my cultural, dreadlocks.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not meant to be that way. And if you had that issue at that time, you should have brought that up at that time.
Yeah, I had that issue. I let it slide, because I was the first, maybe, I had thoughts that you was racist at one point because you didn't like my hair. You're not bringing nobody in with dreadlocks. That just kind of...
It's not about race. It's about hair.
Tonight, University of Arkansas Fort Smith head basketball coach Jim Boone is responding, this through his attorney, to racial discrimination allegations. 4229's Brett Rains spoke with one former player and his parents who say their son was kicked off the team after he confronted the coach about comments the coach made about his hair. Take a look.
The release from Coach Boone's attorney states, quote, Coach Boone didn't punish or mistreat Tyler Williams over the length or style of his hair. Coach Boone's attitude about players' hairstyles is admittedly old school, but it's not discriminatory. He'd feel the same way if a young Larry Bird was playing for UA Fort Smith. That said, he's going to make it abundantly clear to everyone concerned that he recruits players based on their talent and character.
He said, I don't like your hair. I would never recruit anybody with your hair, and that's just how I've always been. And then I asked him what was the problem with that, and then he said in his 33 years of coaching that he's never had a player with hair like mine.
Tyler Williams says he was concerned after his first talk with Coach Boone at the end of last school year. So 2 weeks ago, he and his parents sat down with the coach. That talk escalated and ended with Williams kicked off the team. Williams says he recorded the conversation he and his parents had with the coach. He gave that recording to the university.
You had talked about my hair like you're not liking it, and you not want to recruit nobody with locks like mine.
No, it's not that we don't recruit them, but we make it very clear that once they get in here, they're not going to have their hair that way.
That's kind of to me, that's a racist comment.
It's not about race. It's about hair. I want people to look at our team and see that it's who we are and what we're about.
In a statement released today by Chancellor Teresa Riley, she wouldn't comment on specifics since the Human Resources Department is investigating the allegations. But she did write, quote, "The University of Arkansas Fort Smith will not tolerate racism or retaliation. We never want a student to leave the university feeling disrespected or devalued, and this situation serves as a powerful reminder that we must continually assess and work to create an inclusive environment that values all members of our community." Williams' parents think their son is a victim of racial discrimination.
Most people think racism is dead, but it's not. It's alive and well. It may come in many different shapes and forms, but it's there. This one just happened to rear its head in the form of my son's hair.
The fate of Dumas High School football coach Max Pennington is up in the air after he sent a racist text message to a parent.
We first told you about that text on Monday. It has sparked outrage and racial tension in the South Arkansas town. And tonight, Michael Aaron introduces us to a group that says Pennington deserves a second chance.
Amanda, so many emotions in Dumas tonight, feelings of heartache, disgust, even anger over that text message. Some are calling on the district to fire Pennington, while dozens of his players, friends, and others in the community hopes he can keep his job.
Tonight is a way to amend some of the tension in our community.
As a difficult week in Dumas nears its end,
the children are hurting. We are hurting.
Dozens gather at the community center for a conversation organized by Dumas High School students. A conversation sparked by a text message the school's white football coach Max Pennington sent to the mom of a black student athlete. The woman's son was overlooked at a sports banquet. Pennington apologized. A friend of that mom explains what happened next.
A few minutes later, she received a text message saying that basically that he hated the N-word, the N-word.
I have seen his heart.
Despite the different backgrounds, ages, and races of those in attendance Thursday, all who took the mic shared a common viewpoint on the content of that text.
Nobody should ever say such thing like that.
And whether Pennington should have a future with the school district.
I do not think he should lose his job, but I do think he should suffer the consequences behind what he did.
Pennington was not in attendance, but his family was.
A lot of y'all know him as Coach P. I know him as Big Bubba. He's my brother.
And Lexi Ross asks that her brother be shown mercy.
He made a mistake. He is sorry, and he loves his boys. Black, white, purple, any color.
As those in this room move forward, they hope this moment can be a turning point.
Even if he said it, I don't care. This is bigger than coach. This is bigger than football. This is bigger than Dumas Bobcats. This is our community, because when this is all over with, after the eyes have come from everywhere looking, seeing what we're doing, we got to live together.
The students who organized tonight's rally have started a petition in support of the coach. It has about 150 signatures already. The Teacher Fair Dismissal Act entitles Pennington to a hearing.
To Edmond now, where the walls of Santa Fe High School, a school where a lot of kids go, are now lined with symbols of hate. But there's a few key items left behind that may help police crack this case. News 4's Peyton Yeager live in Edmond with the story. Peyton?
Yeah, Kevin, school's out for the summer, but allegedly 3 teens broke into the high school, vandalizing the property from the band to athletic rooms. Vandals were caught on camera, and police now putting their faces on display, hoping that they're caught. A slew of racist and white supremacist messages spray painted inside Edmond Santa Fe High.
Kind of went through the whole school.
The vandals leaving a trail of evidence and destruction inside and out.
Window coverings and light switches that are spray painted just randomly.
Including countertops in the band office reading KKK and I kill, followed by a racial slur. Police uncovering even more slurs on dry erase boards as they walked the halls. Edmond PD says the suspects also set off a fire extinguisher and knocked over trash cans. Their 3 faces caught on surveillance video after they allegedly broke in through a storage room.
They look like teenagers, but they've done an extensive amount of damage.
Police tipped off when an officer noticed damaged golf carts near school property in the middle of the night, with crucial pieces of evidence possibly left behind. Blood was found on the seat and on the steering wheel. The officer also noticing a hammer on the ground near one of the back entrances.
It's just a waste of everyone's time and money, honestly.
It's unknown if the 3 involved walk these same halls during the school year. Police hoping members of the public will put a face to a name.
We think that somebody in the community will be able to know who they are.
This is the message shared through the Rio Americano High School student body Thursday, now setting off a firestorm of emotions.
To speak to someone in that way or to portray hate is completely unacceptable.
The post, so disturbing we've blurred much of it, was made to look like it was on the school's website. It describes a policy banning black students with racist and derogatory language. A news conference with community activists at the school Monday morning addressed the concerns.
It was sad because I just felt like if this situation was not addressed, what would have happened?
Senior Jalen Taylor shared the post with school officials. Principal Brian Ginter sent this message to parents last week, reading in part, quote, "After our initial review, we found no evidence that a web page with this message ever existed on the Rio Americano High School website, and all indications show the image is a fake."
When we say fake, it means it did not hit the school site. The words are real. The effects of these children are real.
Ginter explained he's working on a long-term plan to repair the problems and issues students face on the campus.
We have students on this campus who are hurting, who don't feel like there is a positive atmosphere for them on the campus, and we need to figure out how to fix that. We need to work with them on figuring out how to fix that, and that's what we're committed to doing.
A 2.5-hour staff meeting held Monday where students could voice their opinions is part of it.
They shared some things that for me were quite shocking to hear that they had to endure and go through.
While there's a plan to recreate a black student union and have regular dialogue between African American students and administrators, parents say they want to see action.
Those are hate crimes and they need to be addressed immediately.
Mississippi Critters is a no-kill shelter that serves Oxford and Lafayette County to rescue, adopt, and transfer homeless animals. Recently, racially insensitive Facebook posts surfaced of President Gail Tidwell Brown. The Board of Directors released a statement and it reads, "Mississippi Critters is non-discriminatory on the basis of race, color, religion, gender expression, age, national origin, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, or military status in any of its activities or operations." Former employee Kathleen Smith has recently come forward about the statements made by President Gail Brown while she was working here at the shelter. She has made it her duty to seek accountability for the recent resurfaced Facebook post and the safety of the animals.
She would make up excuses to not adopt interracial couples or people of color. She would just make these comments, "Oh, I don't think they're fit. I don't think that we should adopt out to them," given no reasons. Nothing. I mean, previous employees have even come forward and say that she would make these remarks all the time, and she would just say, "We're not adopting out to people of color."
More posts started to resurface yesterday and caught the Oxford community by surprise.
More and more posts of hers coming out comparing Curious George the monkey to Obama, pictures of Muslims saying you need to get these ragheads out of our country. There's just a very prominent history of racism and discrimination that Gail has, and I immediately wanted to bring it to the public's attention.
Oxford Animal Shelter CFTA said, "While the subject matter was shocking, we were not surprised that Gail Brown holds these views. The city of Oxford knew of Gail Brown's racism before they contracted with the rescue she founded. CFTA is ensuring transparency and accountability in the management and funding of the animal shelter."
I think it is completely unacceptable. I think that this type of behavior has always been and forever will be unacceptable, and we have to hold the leaders of our community accountable for their actions. I don't think that we should just stand by idly, twiddling our thumbs, waiting for something to happen. I think at this point in time, with the history of racist and discriminating comments that she's made, that it's time to actually take a stand.
We reached out to Gail Tidwell Brown several times and did not get a response.
Back live in Cleveland tonight, where one member of the Illinois delegation was missing this evening. That's because the state party revoked her credentials of Lori Gaine over racist posts and threats of violence. Now, she was here just yesterday on the convention floor with the delegates. Sunday, she tweeted from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and used the N-word. But after learning about it, party chairman Tim Schneider revoked her credentials, saying there will be zero tolerance. I asked him about that tonight. A lot of moving parts here today. Not what you expected you were going to deal with.
Well, we had a great breakfast this morning. Then we get the word that there was this tweet made by one of our delegates. And racism and threats of violence have no place in the Illinois Republican Party. They have no place in a civil society. And certainly we had to deal with it immediately. It's repugnant to me.
This is the post and picture that's causing some controversy. A Pontiac business owner, who's also a Lions season ticket holder, posted this because he was angry that this man and this woman were sitting down during the national anthem. Well, he used a racial slur to describe the two. Now, the woman in the photo, her name is Stacey Graham. She spoke earlier this week saying that she sits down during the national anthem to protest the third verse pertaining to slaves. She and many other people were upset over the racial slur, and that didn't sit well with the Lions organization either.
We do have a fan behavior standard, code of standards, and I think without question that our organization followed up, found out who the individual was, and obviously he no longer has season tickets in our stadium.
Lions head coach Jim Caldwell is talking about David Doptis, the man behind this post. Doptis is the owner of a business in Pontiac called Restaurant Liquidation Auctions. His business has been getting backlash after posting this photo saying, "You want to sit down for the national anthem? You don't like our country? Then get the F out." And he called the two people sitting down the N-word.
Definitely stunned to see something written like that underneath my photo.
Earlier this week, the woman in the photo spoke about the incident. And by Thursday, the Lions organization confirms Doptis is no longer a season ticket holder.
I think it was handled appropriately, I think those things happen sometimes.
We reached out to Doptis earlier this week to ask him about this post, but he has yet to respond.
Hey!
Pushing me.
Oh! Come on.
Take it.
I ain't scared. I don't care. I ain't gonna do your ass for real, not shit. Do me. That's what I like. I like when motherfuckers do me. But I pulled up on you with this. I pulled up on you with respect. Fuck on me before I do your ass off. You better fucking get on. For real. Nigga.
Oh.
I'm keep with that nigga, don't you? You want to keep with that nigga, don't? Come on. Come on. Come on. Daddy, what's up? Daddy, get off of me.
Break this.
I ain't scared. I'm not shaking your head. Get the fuck on. Hey, get the fuck on. Get the fuck on.
Yeah. Nice. I got all that. I got all that shit. God damn, this got to go. I'm going viral today, baby.
That's me. Come on. It's done. Hey. That's the word again. I'm not dealing with that fucking word nigga from nobody right now. You fucking too light skinned to call me a motherfucking nigga.
All right, and we back on the forecast. And I want to say RIP to the brother Rashad Cunningham. And I'm glad the young 12-year-old brother Amir Worship is okay. But this will continue to happen until we take respect. If you don't have a nation or an army to back up what you say, people aren't going to respect it. And the first steps to build that is to build your own institutions. But more importantly, we can't be afraid to defend what we build. And we can't be afraid to defend ourselves. What's there to be afraid of? They already target us. They literally take our tax money to fund our own oppression. At some point, we've got to be fed up enough to take action. Because if we don't, we'll still be having the same conversation 100 years from now. Now, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, man, we have got to start standing for something. Or we're going to keep falling for anything.